Her cousins split the inheritance and left her nothing. Not knowing Grandpa sealed the North pasture. It was a story that began the day I turned 18, the day the state of Oregon decided I was officially my own problem. If you've ever felt like your entire life was packed into a single duffel bag, maybe you'll get what I'm about to tell you. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you have, because this is a community for people who know what it's like to start with nothing but a promise you can't yet understand. The bus smelled like stale coffee and damp wool. Every bump in the road was a reminder that I was moving, but I had no idea where I was going. For 2 years, my world had been the gray walls and scheduled meals of the Willamette Youth Home. Before that, it was a blur of foster homes, each one a temporary holding cell after Grandpa got sick. He was the last piece of family that felt like home. Now, on my 18th birthday, I was being released. Not freed, not graduated. Released. Like a fish they decided was big enough to be thrown back into a river it didn't recognize. In my pocket was a folded, creased letter from a lawyer I'd never met. And in my duffel bag was everything I owned. 3 changes of clothes, a worn paperback copy of a book Grandpa used to read to me, and a toiletries kit they gave you on your way out. A toothbrush and a fresh start. The humor wasn't lost on me, even then. It was a dry, brittle kind of humor, the kind that cracks in your throat. The bus windows were fogged with the collective breath of strangers, but I'd rubbed a small circle clear with my sleeve. I watched the uniform green of the valley slide by, trees blurring into a single watercolor stroke. I was supposed to be thinking about the future, a job, a place to live, all the terrifying adult things the social workers had tried to prepare me for with pamphlets and strained smiles. Instead, I was thinking about the past. I was thinking about Grandpa's hands, the knuckles swollen with arthritis, but the grip always gentle. He smelled of sawdust and soil. He used to tell me, "Ilera, don't ever let anyone tell you what a thing is worth. You decide." You look closer than they do. He'd been gone for 3 years, and the silence he left behind was a constant, low hum in my ears. The state became my guardian, and my cousins, Mark and Sarah, his only other living relatives, had become distant, unfamiliar names in legal correspondence. They were my mom's brother and sister. They'd sent a condolence card to the youth home after he passed. It was signed with a printed font. The bus finally hissed to a stop in downtown Portland, the air suddenly thick with the smells of traffic and rain. The lawyer's office was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building, the kind with a cage elevator that groaned its way upward. The name on the door was etched in frosted glass. Arthur Davies, attorney at law. It looked like it hadn't been changed since the 1970s. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of old paper and dust. A man who I presumed was Mr. Davies sat behind a mountain of a desk, a small clearing carved out for a blotter and a pen set. He was older, with kind eyes that seemed tired, as if he'd delivered bad news for a living for too long. He gestured to a worn leather chair. "Miss Monroe," he said, his voice a gravelly comfort. "Ilera, happy birthday." It sounded strange. No one had wished me a happy birthday yet. It felt less like a celebration and more like a deadline. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I sat on the edge of the chair, my duffel bag clutched between my feet like an anchor. "My caseworker said I needed to see you." About my grandfather's while Mr. Davies sighed, a soft, professional sound. He steepled his fingers and looked at me over the top of his reading glasses. "Yes, your grandfather, Henry Monroe, was a client of mine for many years. A very good man. He was very specific about his final arrangements. He slid a thick file from a precarious stack. Henry's estate wasn't large by modern standards. There was the farmhouse, about 80 acres of land in Havenwood, some farm equipment, and a modest savings account. I nodded, picturing it. The sagging porch, the red barn with the faded chewing tobacco ad painted on its side, the fields that rolled out toward the woods. It was the only real home I remembered. My heart gave a small, painful lurch. Maybe, just maybe, there was something left for me. A place to go. "As you know," Mr. Davies continued, flipping through pages, "your grandfather's closest living relatives were you, and your cousins, Mark and Sarah Peters." He paused, and his gaze softened. "Ilera, the bulk of the estate, the house, the primary acreage, the equipment, and the contents of the savings account has been divided equally between your cousins. The words landed like stones in a still pond. I felt the hope drain out of me, leaving a cold, familiar emptiness. Of course, why would they leave anything for me? To them, I was just a problem the state was handling. A loose end. They're the primary heirs, he said, as if that explained everything. They've already filed the paperwork to sell the property. It's on the market as of last week. The finality of it was crushing. The one place I might have gone was being sold off, erased. I stared at my hands, a tremor starting in my fingers. I was officially homeless and penniless on my 18th birthday. It was almost a cliché. He didn't leave me anything, I asked, the words catching in my throat. Not even a mention. Mr. Davies looked uncomfortable. He cleared his throat and slid a single sheet of paper across the desk, along with a small business check. He did mention you, Alara. Specifically, he left you a parcel of land. It's referred to in the deed as the North Pasture. He tapped the paper. It's a 10-acre plot at the far edge of the property. It was legally severed from the main farm years ago, so it's a separate holding. A tiny spark flickered in the emptiness. 10 acres. That was something. It was land. What's it like? I asked. Mr. Davies took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. This was the part he dreaded. Well, to be frank, it's not prime real estate. It's undeveloped, rocky, and has a significant grade. It's not suitable for farming or building without a great deal of expense. Your grandfather used to call it the goat's playground. Your cousins were, well, they were quite content to let you have it. The property appraiser assigned it a negligible value for tax purposes. Negligible value. The words echoed the narrative of my life. I was the negligible one, the part of the family that could be sectioned off and forgotten. He pushed a check toward me. This is from the estate before it was settled. Henry stipulated a small sum be set aside for your transition expenses on your 18th birthday. It's $500. It's not much, but he wanted to make sure you had something in your pocket. I looked at the check. $500. Enough for a bus ticket and maybe a week in a motel if I was lucky. It felt like a pity payment. A final, dismissive gesture. I took the paper, the deed to my worthless land, and the check. My hands were steady now, the tremor replaced by a cold resolve. Thank you, Mr. Davies, I said, standing up. My voice was flat, devoid of the emotion churning inside me. He stood as well, a look of genuine sympathy on his face. Alara, if you need anything, advice, a reference, my card is on the desk. Your grandfather was proud of you. He talked about you all the time. The words were kind, but they felt hollow. If he was so proud, why did he leave me with nothing but a pile of rocks? I walked out of the office, the cage elevator groaning its descent, carrying me back down to a world where I had no place to go. I had a deed to a goat's playground and $500 to my name. It wasn't a start. It was a punchline. But as I stepped out into the drizzling rain, Grandpa's voice echoed in my head. You decide what a thing is worth. You look closer than they do. The bus ride to Havenwood was 4 hours of watching the world transform. The concrete and glass of Portland bled into sprawling suburbs, then into patchwork farmland, and finally into the dense, dark green of the coastal range foothills. The bus was mostly empty, and I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, the vibration a constant thrum against my skull. I was running toward the one thing I had left, even if it was worthless. Maybe I just needed to see it, to stand on my own piece of dirt and know that it was mine, however useless. Havenwood wasn't so much a town as a crossroads with a post office, a gas station, and a diner called the Rusty Spoon. The bus driver announced the stop with a tired drawl, and I was the only one who got off. The air smelled different here. It smelled of wet earth, pine needles, and wood smoke. It smelled like my childhood. It smelled like him. There was no taxi stand, no Uber app that would work out here. I walked into the diner, the bell over the door jingling softly. A few old-timers sat at the counter, nursing cups of coffee. The woman behind the counter gave me a friendly, curious look. You're not from around here, she said. It wasn't a question. I used to be, I replied, hoisting my duffel bag higher on my shoulder. I'm trying to get out to the old Monroe farm. One of the men at the counter swiveled on his stool. He had a weathered face and hands that looked like they'd spent a lifetime fixing things. Henry's place? Sure, I know it. Sad what happened to him. The grandkids from the city are selling it off, you know. Got a big sign out front. He looked me up and down. You family. His granddaughter, I said. The man's expression softened. Well, I'll be. You must be Alara. Henry talked about you. I'm Bill. I'll give you a lift. It's on my way. The ride out to the farm was quiet. Bill drove a dusty pickup truck that rattled on the gravel road. He pointed out landmarks, telling me small-town stories, but my eyes were fixed on the road ahead, my stomach twisting into a tight knot. And then we rounded a bend, and there it was. The house looked smaller than I remembered, sadder. A garish red and white for sale sign was hammered into the front lawn, a stark violation of the landscape. It was a physical manifestation of my cousin's intentions. This wasn't a home to them. It was an asset to be liquidated. Bill pulled up to the gate. This is as far as I go. You need anything, you come back to the spoon. Folks around here looked after Henry. We'll look after his kin. I thanked him, my voice thick. He nodded and drove off, leaving me alone in a cloud of dust and silence. I stood there for a long time, just looking. The house was locked, of course. I tried the doors and windows, but they were sealed tight. My cousins had been thorough. A wave of despair washed over me. I come all this way for what? To stand outside a locked house that wasn't mine anymore? My gaze drifted to the big red barn. Its paint was peeling, and one of the doors hung slightly askew on its hinges. It looked forgotten, neglected. My cousins had probably cleared out anything of value and hadn't bothered to secure it. On a hunch, I walked over and gave the door a push. It groaned open on rusty runners, revealing a cavern of dusty, slanted light. The barn was mostly empty. The stalls were bare, the hayloft swept clean. They'd taken a tractor, the tools, anything they could sell. But they weren't thorough enough. In the back, tucked away in a small tack room where Grandpa used to mend harnesses, was a small wooden chest. It was an old sea chest, dark and heavy, and sitting right on top, someone had carved my name into the lid. Alara. It wasn't my grandpa's neat script. It was rough, gouged into the wood like a child's work. It was my own. I carved it there one summer when I was 7, and they had missed it. My fingers trembled as I lifted the heavy lid. It wasn't locked. Inside, nestled on a bed of yellowed cheesecloth, with a few things Grandpa must have thought were mine. A collection of unusually shaped rocks I'd gathered from the creek bed. A bundle of my childhood drawings tied with twine. And underneath it all, a small, velvet-wrapped object. I unwrapped it carefully. It was a heavy, old-fashioned iron key, the kind for a skeleton lock tied to a leather thong. Beside it lay a single, sealed envelope with my name on it, written in his familiar, shaky hand. And tucked into the envelope's flap was a faded photograph. It was of me, a gap-toothed 7-year-old, standing next to Grandpa. We were beaming, and behind us was a strange-looking outcrop of gray rocks, jagged and stark against the green grass. I didn't recognize the place. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was something. This was a message. I opened the envelope. The note inside was short, just a few lines. My dearest Alara, when you're old enough to read this, you'll be old enough to understand. Some things look worthless on the surface. Don't forget the North Pasture. It was always for you. Love, Grandpa. The North Pasture. The goat's playground. The worthless scrap of land. I looked at the key in my hand, then at the photograph of the rock formation. A jolt went through me, a sudden, electric certainty. He hadn't left me with nothing. He had left me a map. I left the barn, the heavy iron key clutched in my hand, the photograph and note tucked safely in my pocket. I knew where I had to go. The main farm was laid out in a way that was easy to understand. The house and barn were the center, with the cultivated fields rolling south and west. To the east were the woods. And to the north, past a line of scraggly pine trees, was the land everyone had dismissed. I followed an old, overgrown tractor path that led toward the property line. The air grew cooler as I walked, the smell of damp earth more potent. After about 15 minutes, I saw it. A formidable fence, much newer and sturdier than the sagging barbed wire that bordered the rest of the farm. This was a tall, chain-link fence, topped with 3 strands of barbed wire. It cut a sharp, clean line across the landscape, enclosing about 10 acres of rough, hilly terrain. And in the center of the fence was a heavy steel gate, secured with a thick chain and a massive, rust-pitted padlock. A small, weathered wooden sign was nailed to the gate post. It read, "Private property, and no trespassing." This wasn't a fence to keep cattle in. This was a fence designed to keep people out. My cousins hadn't put this up. This was Grandpa's work. It had to be. My hand was shaking as I lifted the iron key. It looked ancient, almost comical against the modern, heavy-duty lock. I hesitated, a wave of doubt washing over me. This was crazy. It was probably just an old key to a shed that had fallen down years ago. But Grandpa's note, "It was always for you." I took a deep breath and slid the key into the lock. It scraped, resisted for a moment, and then, with a heavy, satisfying clunk, the mechanism turned. The lock sprang open. I pulled the chain free and pushed the gate. It swung inward with a loud, metallic groan, the sound echoing in the unnerving quiet of the place. I stepped through onto my land. It felt like crossing a threshold into another world. The air inside the fence felt different, still and wild. The ground was just as Mr. Davies had described it, a chaotic jumble of rocks, steep inclines, and patches of tough, wiry grass. It was completely unsuited for anything. Useless, but beautiful in a rugged, untamed way. I pulled out the photograph. Me, Grandpa, and the rock formation. I scanned the landscape, my eyes searching for the distinctive shape. And then I saw it, on the highest point of the property, a jagged crown of gray stone breaking through the earth, looking exactly like it did in the picture from all those years ago. The climb was steep, and I had to scramble over loose rocks and push through thorny bushes. By the time I reached the top, I was out of breath, my jeans torn at the knee. The rock formation was larger up close, a cluster of weather-beaten sentinels. I walked around it, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I compared the background in the photo to my surroundings, trying to find the exact spot where we had stood. There, a small, flat clearing on the eastern side of the rocks. I stood where the little girl in the photo had stood, and then I looked down. At first, I saw nothing but dirt and weeds. But Grandpa was a methodical man. He wouldn't have left it to chance. I got on my hands and knees, my fingers brushing away the leaves and loose soil. My hand hit something hard and flat. Metal. I dug frantically with my bare hands, the dirt packing under my fingernails. It was the corner of a box. It was buried deep, and it took me the better part of an hour, using a sharp-edged rock as a makeshift trowel, to unearth it. It was a heavy, green, military surplus ammunition can sealed tight against the elements. It was unexpectedly heavy. With a final grunt of effort, I heaved it out of the hole. The latches were stiff, but I managed to pry them open. The lid hissed as the seal broke. Inside, wrapped in a thick layer of oilcloth to protect them from moisture, was a thick stack of manila envelopes, all bound together with twine. On the top envelope, in my grandfather's familiar script, were 2 words, "For Alara." I sat there on the rocky ground, the wind whipping my hair across my face, and for a moment, I couldn't bring myself to open them. This was it. The answer. The reason for the fence, the lock, the key, the buried box. It felt too heavy, too important. I was just a kid who'd spent the last 2 years learning how to be invisible in a system that didn't have time for complicated feelings. I wasn't equipped for this. A wave of grief, so powerful it almost knocked the wind out of me, washed over me. I missed him. I missed his quiet strength, his unwavering belief that I was more than the world told me I was. I cried then. Not quiet, dignified tears, but ragged, ugly sobs. I cried for the little girl who lost her whole world, for the teenager who navigated the cold bureaucracy of foster care alone. I cried for the anger I felt toward Mark and Sarah, who had so easily discarded both me and Grandpa's memory. And I cried for him, for the love that had reached across the years to find me here, on this worthless, beautiful patch of land. This inheritance wasn't about money or property. It was about this moment, this proof that I had not been forgotten. You know, sometimes life hands you a key to a door you didn't even know existed. And when you open it, You find a room full of everything you were ever afraid of, but also everything you ever hoped for. Have you ever felt that? That mix of terror and hope, standing on a threshold? If you have, let me know in the comments. I read every single one because this journey, this story, it's not just mine. It's for anyone who has ever been underestimated, who has ever been handed a pile of rocks and been told that's all they deserve. This is the moment when you have to decide. Do you walk away, or do you start digging? I sat there until the tears ran dry, until the cold of the ground seeped into my bones. The sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The wind died down, and a profound stillness settled over the pasture. I looked at the stack of letters in my lap. I had a choice. I could close the box, rebury it, walk away from this place and whatever burden of knowledge it contained. I could take my $500 and try to disappear to build a small, anonymous life somewhere. It would be easier, safer, or I could open the first letter. I could choose to trust him, to believe that he had done all this for a reason, and that he believed I was strong enough to see it through. It was the choice between being a victim of my circumstances or the heir to my grandfather's legacy, whatever that might be. My fingers, numb with cold, fumbled with the twine. I chose my grandfather. I chose to trust. I untied the knot and opened the first envelope. The paper was thick and creamy, and the ink from his fountain pen had feathered slightly. His handwriting was the same, a little shakier at the end, but still his. My dearest Alara, the letter began. If you're reading this, it means several things have happened. It means I'm gone. It means you have turned 18. And it means you were clever enough and stubborn enough to follow the trail I left for you. I am so proud of you, my girl. I am prouder than you can ever know. A fresh wave of tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them back. I had to keep reading. I need to apologize. I have set a difficult path for you, full of secrets. I did it to protect you. I knew long before I got sick what kind of people your cousins had become. They see the world in dollars and cents. They see this farm not as a home, but as an asset, and I'm afraid they see you as a liability. I knew if I left the estate to be divided in any traditional way, they would find a legal loophole to take it all and leave you with nothing but a token gesture. So I had to do something different. I had to hide your inheritance in plain sight. I read on, my breath catching in my chest. He wrote about the North Pasture, how he'd always loved it, its ruggedness, its refusal to be tamed. He wrote about how, years ago, a friend from his army days, a geologist, had come to visit. They had walked the property, and his friend had noticed the unique rock formations in the pasture. He'd taken samples purely out of academic curiosity. The results of those samples were in the second envelope. I opened it. It was a formal geological survey report, full of technical terms I didn't understand. But there were highlighted sections, and I read those words over and over until they started to make sense. Significant deposits of spodumene, high-grade lithium content, viable for extraction. I didn't know what spodumene was, but I knew the word lithium. It was in batteries, for phones, for laptops, for electric cars. The world was screaming for it. My grandfather, a simple farmer, had been sitting on a treasure trove. The next letter explained his plan. He had spent the last years of his life meticulously, secretly, preparing. He used his savings to hire a specialized legal firm in another state. First, he had the North Pasture legally severed from the main property, creating a separate deed. Then, he had the mineral rights legally severed from the surface rights of that pasture. This was the brilliant part. He attached the incredibly valuable mineral rights to the deed for the North Pasture, while the worthless surface rights remained a separate, uninteresting entity. Finally, he placed the deed for the combined North Pasture and its mineral rights into a tightly sealed trust. A trust that named me as the sole beneficiary. A trust that could not be opened, accessed, or even acknowledged by anyone until my 18th birthday. He had effectively made the North Pasture a legal and geological fortress. To the outside world, to the county appraiser, to Mark and Sarah, it was just 10 acres of useless rock. Its true value was buried in legal documents they would never think to look for. The final envelope in the stack wasn't a letter. It was a thick bundle of original, notarized documents. The geological survey, the legal order severing the properties. And there, at the very bottom, was the deed. Crisp and official. It read, "The North Pasture, 10 acres, including all subsurface and mineral rights, held in trust for Alara Monroe, to be transferred in full upon her 18th birthday." It was all there. Ironclad. Legal. And it was all mine. He hadn't left me a pile of rocks. He had left me a mountain. A mountain made of the one thing the modern world couldn't get enough of. He'd armed me. He hadn't just given me a gift. He'd given me a weapon. And I finally understood. The fence, the lock, the secrecy, it wasn't to keep me out. It was to protect the pasture until I was old enough to claim it, old enough to defend it. I sat there, the documents spread around me on the ground, the setting sun casting long shadows from the rocks. The weight of it all was immense, but for the first time in years, it wasn't the weight of despair. It was the weight of possibility. It was the weight of a future I never dreamed I could have. I carefully packed everything back into the ammunition can. It felt heavier now, charged with the power of its contents. I carried it down the hill, my steps sure-footed and certain. I locked the gate to my pasture behind me, the clunk of the mechanism a sound of finality, of ownership. I spent the night in the barn, curled up in a pile of old hay in the loft. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring up at the slivers of starry sky visible through the gaps in the roof, my hand resting on the cold metal of the box. The next morning, I walked the 5 miles back into town. I felt different. I walked taller. The invisibility I had worn like a cloak for years had fallen away. At the Rusty Spoon, I ordered a big breakfast and used their public Wi-Fi to look up Arthur Davies' number. I took the phone to a quiet corner of the diner and dialed. "Mr. Davies," I said, my voice clear and steady. "It's Alara Monroe. I'm in Havenwood. I found something I think you need to see." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Alara? Is everything all right?" "Everything is more than all right," I said. "My grandfather, he was a very smart man. He left me the North Pasture. It turns out it's not worthless at all." I explained what I had found, my voice never wavering. I read him the titles and document numbers from the deed and the geological survey. The silence on the other end of the line was profound. I could hear the faint sound of him typing on a keyboard. "My God," he finally whispered. "The old fox. He actually did it." His tone had shifted from paternal sympathy to sharp, professional respect. "Alara, listen to me very carefully. Do not talk to anyone else about this. Not your cousins, not anyone in that town. I'm going to make some calls. I have a colleague who specializes in mineral rights law. Can you get to a scanner? I need to see copies of those documents immediately." I told him about the post office. "Good. Scan every single page and email them to me. I'll drive down there myself tomorrow morning. We'll meet at the diner at 9. And Alara," he said, his voice firm, "don't you worry. We've got this." I hung up the phone, a slow smile spreading across my face. We've got this. For the first time in my life, I wasn't alone in a fight. Just as I was putting my phone away, it rang again. It was an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello. Alara? Is that you?" "It's your cousin, Mark." His voice was slick and smooth, a salesman's voice. It was the first time I'd heard it in years. "Hey, I heard you were in town. Listen, Sarah and I feel just awful about how the estate all worked out. It's this legal mumbo-jumbo, you know? Anyway, we were thinking, that piece of land Henry left you, the pasture, it's not much, but we'd like to buy it from you. For sentimental reasons. We'll give you, say, $5,000 for it. That could be a nice little start for you, right?" The audacity of it was breathtaking. He was calling me less than 24 hours after I'd been legally disinherited, offering me crumbs for a mountain of gold. The old Alara would have been intimidated, maybe even grateful. But I wasn't the old Alara anymore. "No, thank you, Mark," I said, my voice cold as ice. He laughed, a condescending little chuckle. "Come on, kid. Don't be stupid. It's a pile of rocks. $5,000 is more than it's worth. It's a gift. It's not for sale," I said. The slickness vanished from his voice, replaced by an ugly, threatening edge. "Don't get greedy. You're an 18-year-old kid with nothing. You don't want to get into a legal fight with us. We'll drag it out until that $500 your grandpa left you is long gone. Take the deal. I took a deep breath, remembering Grandpa's letters, Mr. Davies' words. I remembered who I was. Mark, I said, and I enjoyed the silence as I let him wait. You should probably talk to my lawyer. I hung up the phone before he could respond. I had a lawyer. I had a future. And I had 10 acres of the most valuable rocks in the state of Oregon. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Mr. Davies was true to his word. He arrived the next morning with a file thick enough to stop a door and a quiet, intense colleague who specialized in resource law. They verified every document, their excitement barely concealed behind professional masks. The cousins, as predicted, made noise. Their lawyers sent threatening letters, claiming undue influence, incompetence, anything they could think of. But Grandpa's work was, as Mr. Davies gleefully called it, a legal masterpiece. It was unassailable. The threats soon dwindled into silence, replaced by a kind of stunned, impotent rage that I only heard about secondhand. Within a month, the first offers started coming in, not from real estate agents, but from geological exploration firms and mining corporations. The numbers in their proposals were staggering, full of commas and zeros that didn't seem real. There were sums of money that could change not just my life, but the lives of everyone in Havenwood. I spent my days in the local library, not looking at bank accounts, but reading. I read about lithium mining, about environmental impact studies, about reclamation bonds, and community benefit agreements. Grandpa had given me more than wealth. He'd given me a responsibility. I wasn't going to let some massive corporation come in and tear up the land that held his legacy, leaving a scar on the earth and the town. I was going to do it his way. Smart, methodical, looking closer than anyone else. I didn't sell. I turned down the massive 8-figure buyout offers that would have let me walk away and never think about Havenwood again. Instead, I worked with Mr. Davies and his team to structure a long-term leasing agreement. I found a mid-sized, ethical sourcing company that agreed to a smaller, more environmentally conscious extraction plan. They agreed to hire locally, to invest in the town's infrastructure, and to fund a full reclamation of the site once the lease was over. It meant less money up front, but it guaranteed a steady, stable income for decades to come, and it protected the place that mattered. It was the kind of deal Grandpa would have made. 3 months after my 18th birthday, I stood on the lawn of the Monroe farmhouse. My farmhouse. The sale to an outside developer had fallen through when the legal challenges began. I had bought it back from my cousin's holding company for a fair market price, an anonymous offer made through Mr. Davies' office. I don't think they ever knew it was me. The garish for sale sign was gone, lying in a heap by the barn, waiting to be burned. The house was mine. The barn was mine. And on the hill, overlooking it all, the north pasture was mine. It was quiet, the only sound the wind whispering through the tall grass. I thought about inheritance. My cousins thought it was a thing you liquidate, a sum you deposit in a bank. They had walked away with the cash, but I had received the true inheritance. It wasn't the lithium, not really. It was the lesson. It was the love that had meticulously planned for my survival, for my future. It was the trust he'd placed in me to be smart enough and strong enough to see it through. He had looked at a worthless piece of land and seen a future. He had looked at a forgotten kid in the system and seen a successor. His faith in me was the real treasure buried on that hill. I had spent so many years feeling like a ghost, a ward of the state, a name on a file. Now, I was a landowner, a business owner, a member of a community. I was home. Grandpa didn't just seal a pasture. He sealed a promise that I was worth fighting for, that my future was worth protecting. He taught me that the most valuable things in life are often hidden, overlooked, and underestimated. And now I want to leave you with this. We all have a north pasture in our lives. It might not be a piece of land with lithium under it. It might be a talent people told you is useless. It might be a relationship others dismissed. It might be a quiet strength inside you that has been buried under years of doubt. Don't let anyone else tell you what it's worth. Look closer. Do the digging. Your true inheritance is waiting for you there. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, if you've ever found value where no one else saw it, please subscribe and become part of this community. Share your own story in the comments below. I promise you, I'll be reading. Because every story of finding your own strength deserves to be heard.
I'm trying to sleepy. This is too good to fall asleep to. You're a good banana pie. Okay, I need you to hop on one of these. Yes. Okay. Perfect. Every time your vid pops up, I know it's bedtime. Hey, Ash. Good to see you. Oh, sorry. Coming through. Oh, sorry. Hope you had a great day, Ash. Hey, Clara. How's it going? Okay. I need Cinderace to light these over here. Oh, and I'm in the wrong place. Okay. There we go. Well, thanks for the donut and the sunglasses, Ash. You're so sweet. Appreciate it. Okay. Well, that's 2 more right there. Let's check out what other habitats we could possibly build. Really, we can build 9 of those. Study area? Trash side TV. Not sure what that is. The dang sunglasses never go on because it's a split screen. Aw, I am so sorry, Ash. Also, thanks for the follow, Stephanie. Appreciate it. Anyway, yeah, good stuff. I fixed like 3 laptops today. Oh, hell yeah, Ash. I was playing this game earlier. It made my house too small. Aw. Yeah, that definitely happened, Clara. Okay. Let's go. Okay, you can stop following us. Alright. And then let's go back to our home base. Oh, thanks for the likes, Ash. You're so sweet. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what to do with this area yet. Actually, wait a second. Maybe we'll do something like this.